there might not be any bad guys in here, but I know for a fact there's a million outside. Huh. Where's everybody going? Bingo?
So relaxing.
Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis, me once again. Welcome back to another video game review. This time is going to be on Resident Evil 4 Remake. That's right, the remake that I thought we would never get, nor would it be the game that I thought we would ever need. But since it's modern time, and I feel like if most people are going to play older games, they should probably play them in the most modern way possible. That way they won't struggle. Either way, it's out now. And if you never played the original game before, which I would feel super sad for you if you didn't, since before it was even released, the original game wasn't even anticipated by that many because of the changes they would make to the formula, how it being a different perspective, how it would focus a little bit more on action, though the horror would still be there. And of course, the zombies were replaced with villagers with parasites inside of them. But not only did it become the best in the series, but one of the greatest games ever, which I agree with. I played the game so many times. I have played the PS2 version, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versions, and I even played the VR port for Oculus Quest 2, which is also fantastic. Now, if you haven't heard the story before of Resident Evil 4, it's pretty basic. Leon Kennedy from the second game has to go on this Spanish island filled to the brim with infected villagers with parasites inside of them, and from there multiple different villains show up along the way who are trying to, keep Ashley Graham because apparently she's important for some reason, not just because she's the president's daughter, but of course you have to rescue her, and of course later down the line you meet up with a merchant, which you can get like upgrades and better weapons. And basically, Resident Evil 4 is what changed Resident Evil as a whole. The changes they made just made the franchise even better. Well, not really, because each installment after that got worse, but with Resident Evil 7 and 8, those definitely proved to be some of the best that the franchise has to offer, including the fact that they decided to do remakes of the other sequels rather than just the first one. The first one's great, second one even better, the third one, it's not bad. But when I heard they were doing a fourth remake, I was a little nervous, because the third game really wasn't all that spectacular. But needless to say, this is the best out of them all. This is the best remake that they have made, and probably the best video game remake of all time. There are definitely some things that they could definitely improve on from the original game. I already consider the original game a perfect game, even though trying to protect Ashley is a pain, and Ramon Salazar is kind of a lame villain. But there is so much stuff that they improved upon here that the changes they make don't hurt the overall experience. And there are some things that they do a little bit worse, but most of the stuff they do are even better. When it comes to the combat, like in the original game, you just had to stop and shoot. You couldn't move around. Right here, when it comes to the combat, you have the freedom to move wherever you go when you're fighting off against enemies, even while you're reloading, because in the original game, you had to stand and reload. You couldn't move a single inch. So that's one thing that they really did improve upon, though. I kind of like the challenge a little bit more. But what's really cool about this is that the chainsaw guy doesn't kill you in one hit. He actually gives you some chances, and with your knife, you can parry enemies, which is a really nice new feature. But probably the biggest thing that separates this from the original game is the fact that there are no QuickTime events. I mean, there are, it's just, there's not like any QuickTime event bosses or anything like that. When it comes to the QuickTime events, they're the more necessary ones and don't happen like unexpectedly. The boss fight, the QuickTime event boss replaced with a knife fight, which I felt was a huge improvement. So it's a lot more easier to have to deal with, knowing the fact that you don't have to worry about QuickTime events or anything like that. Though the QuickTime events never bothered me. They're just something that I have gotten used to when it came to Resident Evil 4. It's honestly what I found it to be a bit more unique. And now look, yes, you still have to escort Ashley Graham, but she's not as much of a pain. In fact, she's far less annoying in this version because really, when she screams like, "Help, Leon!" it's irritating, okay? But I feel like Ashley, while she's still kind of a pain to deal with, you don't have to waste healing items on her when she gets hurt. You just pick her back up and you're golden. So yeah, it's easier to escort her in here than it is in the original game for sure. And I honestly find her voice a little bit better too. No offense to the original voice actress, but I feel like she is a far more like calm in this and doesn't sound like a whiny teenager. Now, of course, it's beautiful. The game looks fantastic in terms of a graphical standpoint. Now, the things that I feel like are a little bit weaker that I wish they could have done a little bit better with because it honestly, there are some things that kind of take away its charm a bit, but they're not really negatives. It's just something that I kind of prefer from the original game, and that's the merchant. The merchant was probably the most interesting character out of Resident Evil 4, but he does have a lot of dialogue in here, so there's that. But I feel like the fact that he just says the same thing over and over in the original version of the game is kind of what gave him a bit more charm. Though I kind of like how he speaks a lot more freely in this one than he does in the previous game. But I don't know, it just I felt like there was more charm to him in the original game. The fact that he didn't have a whole lot to say, but what really improves his character is the fact that he gives you side activities, so that way he can reward you with these jewels that you can trade in to get even better items that you can't even buy. And there's a lot of stuff throughout the game that you can buy, that you can upgrade, and it's honestly the best aspect and the biggest thing that changes the entire game as a whole, like Resident Evil as a franchise as a whole, because you couldn't do that in previous games, but it's probably my favorite thing out of the entire franchise that they have done, and which is why I'm so happy they brought it back in Resident Evil 8. Now, in terms of Resident Evil 4, it has so much replayability, and this one I can definitely say does as well. And I am hoping that they do add in DLC because I would definitely play it like the Ada DLC in the PS2 version. There's honestly so much that I think they can do in here too. Like, if it's free, then it makes it all the more worth it. It took me roughly around 12 hours to beat, and honestly, there isn't a single thing that I felt like they were missing. I mean, there are some like minor things, but it's not like Resident Evil 3 where they just give you like half the game. No, this does feel like a full game, one that I enjoyed spending my time with. So yeah, even though there are some things that kind of make it feel a little bit weaker than the original, there's still a lot more that improve upon it than they do not so much. It's honestly a remake that I feel like isn't just like a recreation, but there are differences to the storyline, and of course the tweaks they made really make it separate apart, but there isn't really anything in the game that just completely ruins it. Some of the changes that they make aren't as good, but I still find them to be relatively decent, even if they aren't as good as the original game. So it honestly doesn't change my rating at all, because what really matters is the gameplay for Resident Evil 4. And it's scary. This game is terrifying. And it's what Resident Evil needs to be. There's still action in here, like it focuses a lot on that. But when it comes to the horror Resident Evil 4, they manage to get it right. Even with the soundtrack, I kind of like the soundtrack to the original game a bit more, but right here, it still has a really creepy and atmospheric soundtrack with some covers mixed in, and it's something that I'm so happy that they managed to put in here with this remake. And in the end, guys, Resident Evil 4 is by far the best remake that they've made so far. They went from a winner to an even bigger winner to not so much of a winner to the biggest winner of them all. Resident Evil 4 Remake is what a remake needs to be. The pacing is just as great as it was in the original game. There are so many things that improve upon it that surpass it. I don't necessarily think this is better as a game. Like, I definitely prefer the original game, but I can say that it's certainly like the best way to play Resident Evil if you want to experience Resident Evil 4 for the very first time. Like, it's sort of the same, but at the same time, it's not. There are differences to the story. There are some more activities for you to do. It's honestly a remake that doesn't feel necessary, but I'm glad it exists. Capcom still knows how to do it with these remakes, even if the third one didn't live up to expectation, but it shows they put a lot of care into this one. It still has everything that made the original game great and stuff that expands upon it, and while it does have some stuff that aren't as good, it doesn't hurt anything at all. I absolutely loved every second I spent on this, and it's by far the remake that I'm going to play the most out of all of them. I mean, I absolutely loved Resident Evil 2, but this just blew that game out of the water. It's a work of art. Just like the first game was, undeniably, Resident Evil 4, it makes me love the original even more. While I think the original game is better in terms of challenge because I died so many times in that, I respect this for letting newcomers play with any difficulty that they want. Resident Evil 4, what more can I say? I'm happy that this is a thing now. And they do continue to make Resident Evil 5 and 6 remakes of that. Hopefully they can improve upon that even more, and I'm hoping they do so. But needless to say, Resident Evil 4 is a must-own, whether you're playing the original version or the 2023 remake. It doesn't matter, they are both amazing. Damn, it's been a great year for remakes and remasters so far. I mean, Metroid Prime remastered, the Dead Space remake, and I like this more than the Dead Space remake. That game was already great. Hopefully, the Silent Hill 2 remake will be great as well. Only time will tell. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Word out.